Hey, welcome back to the next episode of the Halo 2 Analysis Series. We're going to go over the weapon sandbox, but I thought I would do something different because if you wanted, like, just sort of general info, there's obviously, of course, the wikis and so many other videos that have gone over that. And as far as how they work in competitive, there's also many other videos about that. So the only interesting thing that I thought I could contribute as far as the discussion around the weapon sandbox is concerned is just give my sort of tier list of what I like and why. So we're going to do that, and hope you enjoy it. Oh, also before we begin, one other thing of note is that originally I intended for this to be a tier list with 7 tiers going S, A, B, C, D, E, and F, but when I really thought about it and tried placing at least one weapon per tier list, or per tier in the tier list, I just found that there are no weapons that I consider E or F tier in the Halo sandbox, so D is going to be the lowest tier in this tier list, so it'll only be 5 tiers. So we're going to split this up going faction by faction, alphabetically within per faction. So starting off with the UNSC, and honestly, I'd put the battle rifle somewhere, I'd put it at B tier. I think that's roughly where I'd put it. It's not my favorite weapon in the game. It's not my least favorite, but it's middle of the road. It's fun to use, but it's also very common. Obviously, the 3-shot burst is very handy, and there are a lot of great combos with it, BXB being the most notable, of course. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to put it. And then next, the Magnum. I'd put the Magnum at C tier. I know as far as strength-wise it's pretty bad, but because of that it makes me it's really fun to use, you know what I'm saying, because everybody ignores it, nobody uses it. It's absolutely awful unless you're playing campaign on normal or easy. It is an overwhelming challenge. I don't want to say it's impossible to get kills with it, but it's pretty damn difficult on heroic and legendary, and in actual multiplayer matches, unless you're playing with people that are completely inexperienced, likewise it's pretty difficult. But it looks cool and it sounds cool. So we're judging these based on how much I like them, so it's definitely not the bottom tier. I'd give it C. And then after that, the rocket launcher, oh boy, I'd put that just below S tier at A tier. It's great sound design, super handy, arguably the most useful rocket launcher in the series, being able to lock onto both flying and land vehicles, and does so pretty well in my opinion. Yeah, nothing much more to say to it. The only reason I'm not putting it on an S tier is because there's nothing that like wows me about its design. It's pretty cool, but you know what I'm saying. So S is for absolutely perfect all across the board, and the rocket launcher is pretty cool but not quite perfect in my opinion. And the SMG, I'd probably put the SMG along with the Magnum. Same sort of deal, not particularly useful, but really great sound design, looks pretty cool, and fun to use when you can on lower difficulties or against players that aren't super experienced. Yeah, not much more to say about that one. Next, the sniper rifle. Oh man, geez, the Halo 2 sniper rifle is very, very iconic for a good reason. It's a dominating weapon on the battlefield, especially for people who are really good with using it, obviously. Sound design is really great, and it's relatively common as far as the multiplayer is concerned, and the campaign less so, but it's pretty good. I'd put it at B tier. I think there are a couple other sniper rifles in the series that have better design as far as visual is concerned, and a few that are a little bit easier to use, but yeah, especially the sound design as far as this game is concerned, it knocks it out of the park. So, and oh geez, I skipped over one UNSC weapon. I skipped over the shotgun. That's a shame because I'd put the shotgun right up in A tier. It's the best looking shotgun in the series in my opinion. Not as strong as the CE shotgun, but it's still definitely pretty powerful. It's inarguably a power weapon in my opinion, still even in the Halo 2 sandbox, both in campaign and multiplayer, especially campaign, geez. I mean, the flood levels are effectively shotgun levels, and sound design, mechanics, all good. I love the green lights on it. That's what I think it should have, not the blue ones. I like the green ones better. So yeah, putting the shotgun up in A tier. Now, switching over to the Covenant, and we're going to include the Sentinel Beam under the Covenant as well, just because otherwise there'd only be one Forerunner weapon. So, yeah, we're just going to throw that in here. And starting off with the Beam Rifle, I'd put the Beam Rifle at B tier with the Sniper Rifle. I think it looks cooler than the Sniper Rifle, but as far as effectiveness and ease of use, it's about the same. It has some strengths and weaknesses that the Sniper don't have, and vice versa, so I think they balance each other out fairly well. I think the Sniper sounds cooler sound design-wise, but I think the Beam Rifle looks cooler, and so, again, they balance out overall, both mechanically, in my opinion, and definitely as far as favoritism, which is what this tier list is obviously all about. So I'd throw them at B tier, put the Beam Rifle with the Sniper and the Battle Rifles as well. And then up next, the Brute Plasma Rifle. This is going to be one of our 2 D tier weapons. I know I said earlier I originally thought of having this as having 7 tiers and having E and F tier, but the Sandbox just doesn't have any E or F tier weapons. But I think the Brute Plasma Rifle is probably my least favorite weapon in Halo 2. It looks cool, the idea of it is cool, but well, let me put it this way. The idea of having a Brute Plasma Rifle is interesting, but how they made it mechanically I don't think is particularly interesting. And yeah, it doesn't show up a whole lot in campaign or multiplayer. It doesn't have a lot of use, and it has the same exact, obviously, sound design as the Elite one. It would be nice if they did like maybe a little bit more sound design variation and a little bit more aesthetic variation other than just changing the color. So yeah, I'd put that at D tier. And then after that, we've got the Brute Shot. I'd probably put the Brute Shot a tier above that at C tier. The melee capability of it is pretty cool, and its ability to launch objects around is pretty cool. But that's about where things that I like about it end. I don't hate the weapon, obviously. Those things are pretty helpful, but I'm not crazy about the visual design as far as that's concerned. The sound design's not bad, not good. It's not like, I don't know, it's not as satisfying to me audibly as some of the other weapon sound effects. And oh my goodness, it being used against you can be a real pain in the behind, especially on higher difficulties, given how brute-centric some of the campaign levels can get. So I'd put that at probably B tier for how much I like it. The carbine is probably my favorite single-shot weapon in all of Halo. As far as the rifles are concerned, at least. Halo 2 carbine is my absolute favorite. The visual design is just absolutely awesome. It's pretty good to use. I know on like a competitive level, everybody prefers the battle rifle, but on a more casual level, and especially going through the campaign, it's just as good as the carbine. And in my opinion, from that perspective, because obviously I'm not a competitive player, it's effectively the battle rifle, except it looks cooler, and it sounds cooler, and it has more ammo, or at least has better ammo usage. So I put that straight up in S tier, especially because it's one of the most iconic weapons that's most affiliated with the Arbiter, other than the Energy Sword, of course, which we'll get to. And so, actually, speaking of which, the pardon me, the Energy Sword is right after it, and the Halo 2 Energy Sword is, as far as all weapons are concerned, my favorite in the entire Halo franchise. Being able to sword fly, and just whipping it on and swinging right away, and oh my goodness, the Halo 2 Energy Sword just had so much mobility and usage, both adjacent and sometimes not even directly affiliated at all with combat, on top of obviously it being very effective in combat, that it just made it so fun to use. And of course visually sounds cool, that, you know, play that sound effect now. That sound is just super cool. The visuals are epic. It's one of the most iconic laser energy futuristic swords in all of franchise building outside of lightsabers, you know what I'm saying? And for a good reason too. And of course, being a big Arbiter fan, it's the weapon that is the most affiliated with him, I would argue. And that definitely bought it some favors with me, especially I'm a big Elite fan, and of course that's also a weapon heavily affiliated with just the species as a whole. So yeah, I'd put that in S tier. And then The third and final S tier, I promise not all the Covenant weapons are going to be S tier, just alphabetically. This is how it worked out, I promise. Is the Fuel Rod. The Fuel Rod with the gold and green. I think that's a really good color combo going on. Its rarity, ironically, made it more appealing to me, especially because when you played the original Halo 2 on multiplayer, I don't recall it being accessible like on the OG Xbox at all in multiplayer, and the only time you could get it was in the campaign on a couple Arbiter missions, and so it was a very niche weapon that didn't show up a lot, and sort of made it a rarity and a interesting sort of thing of note when you got to use it. And obviously it's pretty powerful, not quite as strong as the rocket because it didn't have the lock-on capability, but it had its own strengths as far as being able to fire more shots and have them arc if you knew what you were doing. It was kind of like the Scorpion and the Wraith, you know what I'm saying? Generally speaking, the Scorpion is better, but if you know what you're doing and the person in the Scorpion is either average or below average, you could do some clever tricks to actually come out on top. And likewise with the Fuel Rod. Sound design, obviously, great as well. And yeah, S tier for me. And then next after that is the Needler. The Needler is one of the most iconic weapons in Halo, and I love it. I love that it's been a consistent weapon in the franchise because it's a unique design and sort of mechanics that separates it from a lot of the other weapons. And oh gosh, I forgot the name of the needles, but the Blamite or whatever, they're just so cool looking, and the idea of that, these crystals that like target people and then explode when you get too many of them clustered up, that's just so neat. I love that mechanic. And the sound design is pretty good, but mechanically it's it's pretty rough. And as far as visual design, there are definitely some better looking Needlers that we'll see later in the franchise. So with all things in balance, I'd probably put it as our final weapon in the B tier. And then going on after that, the Plasma Pistol. A Plasma Pistol, okay. I am going to say some controversial things that are going to make many classic Halo 2 fans very upset. But I would put, as far as, again, this tier list is how much I enjoy these weapons and just overall vibes, it's the one other weapon that goes in the D tier for me with the Brute Plasma Rifle. The sound design is really good, but I think the utility of being able to stop vehicles really changed the game in a positive way in later Halo games, and not having that is a big hindrance. And simultaneously, with how hyper aggressive it is at targeting people, it felt, this is going to sound disrespectful, but it felt a lot less skillful in a way, or at least a lot less intricate to work with, a lot less cleverness, sort of, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to finding a way to make use of it, or at least less utility. It's just very straightforward. Hold it down, and then if you get a second of a peek at a person, it'll immediately home into them and hit them, and then a headshot every single time. And I didn't find that very appealing, gameplay-wise, both to be used against me or to use against others. Visually, we'll see a lot cooler plasma pistols, especially with like the H2A and the Halo Reach model. That's like gorgeous. But again, sound design, they hit it out of the park, at least. I'll give them that. But overall, I would put the plasma pistol at D tier because it's kind of the opposite of the fuel rod sort of situation. It's arguably the most common weapon in the entire game, and so you see it and you sort of get, or at least I sort of get sick of it. It's not that useful for how I like to play the game, and it's, yeah, I don't hate it, but overall, I'd put it in D tier. Sorry. And the plasma rifle, sort of almost the exact antithesis of an opinion here. I actually have it up in A tier. I love the sound design. I think the plasma rifle in Halo 2 is probably my favorite looking plasma rifle in the series as well. As far as mechanics are concerned, it could be a little bit more powerful, but I will say of all the dual wieldable weapons, it is, from my experience at least, and a couple other players have said this as well, the most effective to be used on its own as a singly held weapon out of, again, all the weapons that could be dual wieldable, which isn't necessarily like something you want to hang your hat on, but it is a strength of it for sure. And very similar to the carbine and the energy sword, it's a weapon very heavily symbolically affiliated with the elites and the arbiter, and so because of that, obviously I'm going to like it and be a big fan of it. And so yeah, I believe that is all the weapons. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and look forward to the next episode in the series. Love you all, and take care.